In 2006, director Jim Mickle worked with his friend Nick D'Amici on an unusual little horror film called Mulberry Street. Because of its uniqueness, it gained a lot of attention and was picked up for distribution as part of the 8 Films to Die For series in 2007. One of the people who acted in the film was Larry Fessenden. Aside from acting, Fessenden was also a writer, director, and producer who since 1985 had been running the independent film studio Glass Eye Pix. Fessenden liked Mickle's style and creativity, so after the film, they spoke about different ideas, but nothing came of it at the time. After Mulberry Street, Mickle was trying to get another film going, to no avail. In 2008, he was talking to D'Amici and decided they should do a web series while they were waiting for the next movie to happen. The following day, Mickle received an email with a rough draft D'Amici wrote that night called Stakeland. It was about a lone survivor called Mr. traveling across a vampire-infested United States. D'Amici was inspired by the 1956 film The Searchers and based the character of Mr. on John Wayne. Over the next few weeks, D'Amici wrote 24 webisode scripts. D'Amici spoke with Fessenden, who was immediately interested in the project, but as a film rather than a series. In November of 2008, Mickle shot some test footage to show to potential investors. It was almost immediately picked up by Glass Eye Pix and Dark Sky Films. In the months that followed, D'Amici hammered out the script, while Mickle shot more footage for visual effects tests and teasers. To further drive up interest, they premiered a teaser at Fangoria's Weekend of Horrors in April of 2009. The crowd reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Early in the summer of 2009, they entered pre-production. They were location scouting, working on props and casting. D'Amici was the first and only choice to play Mr. When he wasn't working on the script, he was making his own props and clothes for the movie. The character of Martin was originally written to be a 12-year-old kid. However, since there were too many restrictions when shooting with younger actors, they cast Connor Paulo. Connor was 19 at the time, but looked much younger. Connor was a cast member of the show Gossip Girl, and Mickle was afraid that casting him would be seen as the cliché of hiring a teen TV star for a horror film. After seeing his audition, though, he knew he was the right one for the job. While discussing the character of Belle, Mickle thought about Danielle Harris. Most of the cast knew her as a scream queen, but Mickle only knew her from her sitcom work. Mickle met her on an interview with Fangoria Radio, and he thought she'd be perfect. She called while on the set of Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 and agreed to be in the film. They cast Sean Nelson to be Willie and Michael Cerveris to be the evil Jebediah. With most of the cast in place, the script written, and the locations picked, pre-production ended. The movie was focused on the character Mr., who saves the young Martin from a vampire attack. They travel their way through the U.S. on their way to New Eden, a place where vampires can't survive. Along the way, they meet various characters and run afoul of an evil religious cult called the Brotherhood. Since the movie was supposed to take place over a long time, they planned a break in filming. So they'd shoot for a few weeks in August and September, and then would return to finish the film in November. This way it would give the illusion of seasons passing. With a $625,000 budget, Stakeland started filming in August of 2009. The first half of the film was shot in various locations in Pennsylvania. They couldn't afford to shoot the movie on film, so they shot it with 2 Red 1 digital cameras. In order to stay in character, D'Amici slept outside, either in a tent or in his car for the entire shoot. The car Mr. drives was bought off an ad from Craigslist. The family that sold them the car has a cameo in the film. While the car had the right look, it broke down constantly to the point of where they had to tow it to location and push it into scenes. Since the car didn't run, they had to shoot this entire scene in the director's driveway. They added smoke and shook the car to make it appear to be moving. In order to help give the roads an apocalyptic look, they asked a local junkyard to tow a few wrecks out and flip them for the shots. For the opening in the barn, they had a fire truck providing the rain and the wide shots, and for the close-ups, the crew stood on ladders out of frame and sprayed them with water bottles. The football helmet Martin wore was from Mickle's high school. The girl getting eaten early in the film is the director's sister. Fessenden had a cameo as the bartender. Many of the producers and crew ended up being vampires, some over and over again in different outfits. The vampire makeup took roughly 4 to 5 hours to apply. Many of the extras in the film were locals from the towns they were shooting in. For the scene where Mr. and Martin were going into a town, originally the entrance was blocked by some trucks. One of the extras was a conductor and asked if they'd like him to bring in his train. The guards were from a local biker gang. This scene was an homage to the movie Christine. A neighbor of Mickle's had this huge plot of land, and on it was this bus, which they ended up using for part of the film. The snow was the crew on the roof dropping potato flakes. The home they shot in was also a neighbor Mickle had shot a student film in years earlier. They finished filming the first part and now were on a break for 2 months until November. During this time, Mickle saw the trailer for Zombieland. He was frustrated because of the obvious name similarity as well as the themes. He opted to keep the original name because anyone who saw the 2 movies would immediately know they were worlds apart. During the break, they still didn't have anyone cast for the Nun. The producers wanted a name in order to help sell the film to distributors. They needed the right actress for the role of Sister, and someone suggested Kelly McGillis. Mickle thought she'd be perfect for the role, but there's no way someone who hadn't made a movie in years would return just to shoot some indie horror film. They sent her a copy of the script, and she liked it so much she took the part. She also let them know they were filming roughly 30 minutes from her house. Fessenden contacted Mickle about the second half of the shoot. Even though they were halfway through the film, they used up 3/4 of their budget. He needed to cut a day from the schedule, as well as reduce some of the shot lists for other days. Mickle responded they could condense a bunch of shots into one long tracking shot.
And so his idea was, okay, I'll do that entire scene in one shot. I was like, that's not what I meant. That's the most complicated solution I can think of.
In the end, he liked it though, and Mickle was able to make it work. Everyone returned in November to shoot the rest of the film. The second half was shot mostly in upstate New York. The Santa vampire was originally a clown. There were 2 factories in the movie. One was an abandoned baseball bat mill, and the other was an abandoned tank factory. They did end up shooting some webisodes. They made 7 shorts to be seen as prequels to the film. The shoot ended in mid-November. It was 28 days total, 14 days in Pennsylvania, 13 in New York, and 1 pickup day in Queens. With the footage of the film edited, Mickle did all his own visual effects. Whatever wasn't in the film practically, he did in the film digitally. The graffiti was CG. Many of the billboards were digitally replaced. They couldn't afford to rent a helicopter, so he created one with lens flares and sound effects. The vampires being dropped from the helicopters were digital. He also did an incredible job of erasing cars, adding debris, and making certain shots look completely different. Jeff Grace, who worked with Fessenden on The Last Winter, created a hauntingly original score for the film. The audio guy was a fan of Doom and inserted some sounds from the game into the movie. The movie premiered at the Toronto International Film Fest on September 17, 2010, during their popular horror segment, Midnight Madness. The crowd loved it, and it won the Midnight Madness Cadillac People's Choice Award. For Mickle, this was a dream come true. He said ever since he was 15, he wanted to premiere a movie at Midnight Madness. Now, 15 years later, and he was. Stakeland isn't just a vampire movie, but an emotional journey, which is why I think it resonates more than a lot of the others. There's very little dialogue. They express most of the shoot with just looks and reactions. What they were able to do with such little money is astonishing. The visuals look amazing for a larger budgeted film, but look even more impressive when you discover how small their budget was. Beyond that, the story was what really drove this home. The dynamic between Mr. and Martin and everything they went through to survive was both heartbreaking and satisfying. Some of the things, like the Brotherhood dropping vampires on the town, was incredibly unique. With all the attention from Stakeland, Mickle was offered directorial duties on the remake of We Are What We Are. He then directed the adaptation of Cold in July, which he co-wrote with Demichi. After the unique spin Demichi put on vampires, he followed it up with the refreshingly original werewolf movie, Late Phases. It was just announced a sequel to Stakeland called Stakelander has already been filmed and is set to release later this year. Demichi returned to write, and the surviving cast was back as well. Mickle didn't direct, but they got Dan Burke, who did the 2015 thriller Body. Stakeland is no small feat in filmmaking. They took a somewhat tired monster, the vampire, and put a completely fresh perspective on it. Then they made the film even more interesting by adding the Brotherhood and making them just as much of a threat as the vampires. Even with the small amounts of dialogue, the film was still able to breathe life into each character. They managed to create a fully realized world for them to live in. I'm really glad we're getting a sequel to this. Maybe it'll spark a new wave of character-driven monster films, instead of whatever the hell this was supposed to be.
Why are you filming our asses? Why would you do that?
Because they're awesome.
There you go. There's an answer.
Oh no, please, I've been eating Snickers all week.